Good evening, welcome back to the Fire Burns Within channel. Time for another video. This time I'm talking about Aussie power metal, Aussie classic heavy metal, Aussie melodic metal. Not thrash, not death, not black, but all the melodic stuff. Yeah, I love the Aussie scene. I think the Aussie scene is a very strong scene. It's quite underrated, I think. And they're very cool bands in Australia. I've picked out my top 12 Aussie bands in order, actually, starting from 12 and going down to 1. What I can say about the Aussie scene is that the Aussie power metal or melodic metal, heavy metal scene is quite a bit different than the European scene. I think it's more closely related to the American scene. It's quite a little bit heavier than the European scene. It's not as sort of, the frilly shirt brigade as they're quite mockingly called. The Italian mobs, the Spanish mobs and all those, the very symphonic, maybe some of the Finnish mob, some of the Scandi mob, they're quite mocked in some circles, which is rubbish anyway, but the Aussie scene is quite a heavy scene. The bands are still very melodic. I'd say they're a good mix between, say, the European scene and the American power metal scene. So the Aussie scene is really a solid scene of heavy metal. I mean, there's quite a lot of good bands. I mean, I've just mentioned 12. I went through all the Aussie bands I could find, and some of them I don't know too well. I know the odd album, but these 12 are the ones that really stood out. They've got albums which I love, sometimes way more than one. And they deserve definitely a mention in this list. Anyway, the first one is Crimson Fire. This band has only got the one CD, and they were formed in 1997, which is quite a long time ago. I'd say this band, on their own one and only CD, is the closest to the European style of power metal. It's very sort of like Halloweenish, German style melodic. It's also symphonic. Very cool album, Crimson Fire. I don't know what's happened to them since though. They've I think the album came out 2012ish, something like that, or 2011. I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't got the dates, but they've disappeared. I don't know what's happened to them. But there's still, that one album was so good that they make my list of 12 easily. Okay, the next band is a band called Darker Half. They've got 4 albums released. They were formed in 2003. They've got an album this year actually, which was really good. Probably their best album, their most the best, most melodic, most interesting album. They're a very technically proficient band. They're quite heavy, again, a little bit heavier in style than, say, the European power metal bands. Very cool album, Darker Half. Very cool band. Well worth checking out. Number 10 in the list is Divine Ascension. This band is probably one of the most progressive bands in my list. Not the only progressive, but I'd say they're more a progressive metal band than a power metal band, but they still have elements of both, so let's call them prog power. They're very sort of, it's a mix between the European and because they're prog, a little bit Dream Theater-ish, but not too much. I mean, I'd say they're more melodic than sort of like more technically, proficient. I mean, they're very technically adept, but they're not like all about showing off technical chops. I mean, it's more to do with the vocal melodies, especially because they've got a female singer. I mean, she's a really good singer. The album that I really like is Liberator. I really like that album. A very cool album. The Uncovering is also a very good album. Very epic. Very like just very cool. Great mix. I mean, between prog, maybe mainly more prog than power, but Divine Ascension definitely well worth checking out. Number 9 in the list is Vanishing Point. They've been going since 1995, quite a long time. They've got 6 albums out, and they've just released this year after a long time away. Their first, I think from memory, their first couple of albums are really not that great. You know, they're just finding their feet. The production is so-so. But from, I think, the 3rd album onwards, Vanishing Point becomes a really cool, great melodic, progressive metal band with hints of power metal, but mainly progressive again. Their latest album is really good. I mean, I really like the album from 2020. They've just released it. It's very melodic, it's heavy. I really like the singer. His name is Silvio Massaro. He's got quite a distinctive voice. He's very sort of manly, quite a thick voice, but he's also very smooth. He's not like super gritty or anything like that. But Vanishing Point is just an excellent band. Number 8 is a legendary band. It's an old power metal band formed in '89. They're called Dungeon, of course, the first band of Lord Tim, the legend of Aussie metal. Everyone knows Lord Tim, Tim Gross. He formed, well, I don't know, he formed Dungeon way back. I think Stu Marshall was the guitarist in Dungeon as well, but he left. Dungeon has got 4 albums, not a whole load of albums, because they split, I think, early 2000s, because Stu Marshall had left, and then Lord Tim, or some people call him Tim Lord, I don't know, Lord Tim, I think. Tim Gross, to give his full name, he decided, well, Dungeon is done, it's time for a new band, and he formed Lord. But more on Lords to come, obviously. But Dungeon is a great band, melodic, just very classic melodic heavy metal, power metal. No progression in that band, you know, it's just pounding, heavy power metal. Lord Tim, his vocals are just awesome singer. He really is a great singer. A Rise to Power is a great album. It's probably my favourite one, but all 4 of them is good. The first one I don't know too well, but the last 3, the 3rd and 4th especially, are my favourite ones. Okay, number 7 is Black Majesty. They've got 7 albums out. They formed in 2001, so they're fairly regular every, say, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. The mainstay of this band is Evan Harris. This guy is in, like, he's been in literally all the Aussie melodic style bands, progressive, power. He's been in a lot of bands. And of course, Black Majesty is now his main band, I think. Although he might be in other bands as well. I can't say that for a fact. But Black Majesty has a lot of solid albums. I mean, some of their later period albums is so. I think the most recent, what I didn't fully get into, but some of the earlier ones are really good. Tomorrowland is one of my favourites. Very good album, band Black Majesty. I mean, if you follow Aussie power metal, this is a band, or these bands which I'm mentioning are bands which are basically must hears. If you follow it, you'll know them anyway. But if you don't, then you definitely need to check these ones out. So that was number 7, Black Majesty. Right, number 6 is a big band, Terra Maze, a formerly quite thrashy, progressive, technical thrash band, which has morphed into a very melodic, heavy metal, prog metal band. You know, they've lost quite a lot of the prog leanings as well. They're becoming a more straightforward, more catchy, more melodic band. They've changed singer along the way. They've just released a new album, I Wonder, which I've heard bits and pieces of. I've heard the singles, and the singles are just amazing. So melodic, so catchy. Their early stuff is really good as well. I mean, if you like your thrashy stuff, very technical, very choppy, very clean, very melodic, still very good vocals, but although they had a different singer then. The mainstay of the band is a guy called Dean Wells. It's his band basically. It's really good, really good. They had like a hot streak between 2012 and 2015. They released like 3 albums in fairly quick succession between those years, and they were rock solid. And then they sort of like they left that scene behind and over the top thrashy tech stuff and became a sort of very melodic, more catchy, or not power metal, but just slowing down a bit, not being so thrashy. It's more about the vocal melodies, and I think that also continues with I Wonder, the new album. From what I've heard anyway, from the two singles which I've heard. Anyway, that's Terra Maze, number 6. Really awesome band, really awesome band. I mean, these 12 in this Aussie video, the quality in these bands is just top notch in my opinion. Anyway, number 5 is I Fear. I Fear have got 5 albums out. They were formed in 1994. Unfortunately, they've been missing in action since 2012. The last CD came out in 2012. The early I Fear album I wasn't really into. I don't think I even heard it, to be honest. I got on board when Danny Ciccati, ex of Pegasus, came on board. When they got Danny in the band, I mean, the band just took off for me. Like, they became like this really cool, really heavy sounding. I mean, I can't stress enough how heavy I Fear sounds. Like, the way Danny sings as well, he really brings out the heaviness. Like, he's got this great tone. He's got this sort of like raspy, powerful, but still very melodic tone. And the band itself is very suited. I mean, their albums from Danny, all their albums with Danny are top notch. I'm not sure exactly why he left the band, but he did leave, and they've got a new singer, but I don't think, well, I'm pretty sure, or I know for a fact that they haven't released anything with him. So the status of the band is not that obvious to me, although they're shown as active on Metal Archives, but I don't know. But I Fear is just an awesome band. Evan Harris has also been in I Fear. I don't know, maybe they can return, I don't know, with their new singer, hopefully, but I'm not sure if they are going to. I'm not sure about this, but I think the singer is a guy who was in this Aussie power metal band called Bane of Winterstorm, which actually nearly made my 12, but they've only released the 1 album as well, which was a very symphonic power metal band, speedy power metal. Very cool as well, that one, but just failed to make my list. But I think he's now the singer in I Fear, so it's listed, but don't quote me on that one. But anyway, no sign of I Fear, but I Fear is just amazing. They're 5th on my list. The Unseen, I love that album. I think that album is awesome. There you go. But 4 bands ahead of I Fear. The first band ahead of I Fear is Ilium. This band is awesome. They were formed in 2002. They've got 7 albums, so quite a prolific amount of albums in 18 years. So, you know, roughly 2.5 years between albums. It's not a bad ratio. Their early albums are okay, like they're good, but I think their mid to late period, or now, even their period now, is by far their best period. They released an album this year again, Carcinogeist. Oh, it's an amazing album. It's an awesome album. They released an EP called Envirometal towards the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020. This album was, again, well, I say album, it's like a long EP. It was like a 30, 35, 40 minute EP. Very cool again. I mean, these two albums are just basically like brother and sister. They're basically sounding the same, more awesome, melodic, very melodic power metal. I mean, they're not a progressive band at all. They're a classic, melodic, heavy power metal band. Just Ilium is just awesome. I mean, I really like them. That Envirometal CD, I think that was released at the time when the Aussie bushfires were pretty much rampant, and you know, that was sort of like COVID hadn't quite started yet. It was sort of January. I mean, we knew about COVID, but the Aussie bushfires were like, they were the big story, big environment story. And I didn't actually know that that EP got released, and then I heard the EP, and then I realized, well, yeah, this sort of like reflects their homeland. And I mean, the troubles that Australia were going through at that time, it was like all the rage, all the news, and then COVID came, and that's it. We forgot about the poor old Aussies. But anyway, yeah, Ilium, definitely. If you don't know Ilium, you've got to check them out. They're a great heavy power metal band from Australia. The top three. In third place is the almighty Lord, and the band formed by Lord Tim after Dungeon folded. They've got 5 albums out. They released their most recent album, Fallen Idols, in my opinion, is their best album. They've got a lot of solid albums, but Fallen Idols, released last year, is just an awesome album. It's heavy, it's fast, it's melodic. Lord Tim on vocals. I've talked about Lord Tim earlier. Lord Tim is just an awesome singer. I mean, the guy's really underrated. I mean, Aussie guys, I don't know, in the world scene, they don't seem to get a name for themselves, but they're just awesome. If anybody, like, you know, likes power metal and doesn't follow the Aussie scene, they really need to follow bands like Lord, Ilium, so on, I Fear, all these bands. They don't always release, but 3 or 4 of them have released this year, so they're in there, they're out there. You've just got to seek them. Like I said, Lord Tim, he's a legend of the Aussie power metal scene. Check out Lord. Lord is awesome. But there are 2 bands ahead of Lord in my favourite Aussie melodic power metal bands, heavy metal bands, progressive bands. In second place is the almighty Pegasus. Of course, I love Pegasus. Pegasus was literally the first Aussie band I ever heard in power metal. It was 1997. Wings of Destiny came out, and at the time I was listening to Hammerfall a lot. Obviously Hammerfall's first, and mainly Legacy of Kings after. I was a huge Legacy of Kings fan. Then I heard Pegasus, and I'm like, whoa, what's this? Heavy power metal from down under. This is what we power metal fans, or you know, the ones that we were getting in, the people who were getting into the melodic power metal scene, this is what we need. And then for the first time you hear Danny Chakati. Danny's like, he's wailing like there's no tomorrow. I remember watching that video when they're all in the castle. I can't remember what song it is now. Yeah, it's their famous single from the Wings of Destiny album. And Danny's like wailing away, and he's like a little small guy, Danny. His hair is long, and it's even longer now. I mean, I dread to think how far it is, but it's super long. And then Danny's like, he's wailing like there's no tomorrow. He's a proper air raid siren. He's like the air raid siren of Down Under. The guy is something else. Pegasus is awesome. I love that Wings of Destiny album. The albums that came after, I love them too. Very cool. Breaking the Chains, it's probably my favorite Pegasus album. It's just such a cool album. The Headless Horseman, I also love. Then I don't know what happened. Danny, he left. I guess, I don't know. Lack of motivation. I don't know. Lack of action. Left the band. I don't know. And they've never released an album since. I don't know even if they're active. I think 2011 was their last album. I don't know. Pegasus is awesome though. It's melodic, it's power metal, it's true heavy metal. Yeah, I call them like the Aussie Manowar. It's like a mix between Manowar and Hammerfall. The Aussie Manowar. Anyway, there you have it. They're number 2, but there's a band ahead of Pegasus even. They're not actually a power metal band. They're a melodic progressive metal band. I've fallen in love from the first time I heard this band. The band is of course Voyager, the Aussie synth infested melodic progressive metal band. I love these guys. From the very first CD, from the get-go, these guys were already great. You know, some bands like I mentioned, they take a while to get into their stride. They have okay debuts, like you can see the hints of greatness, but I don't know, with Voyager, immediately they won me over. This sound was like so cool, this sort of like melodic, very progressive metal sound, very catchy, but very like almost pop infused. Like the melodies, especially from singer Daniel Estrin. I mean, the guy is just like, I wouldn't call him a pop singer, he's a metal singer, but he's got the way of singing that hints at huge pop melodies. I mean, you can call them the Depeche Mode of progressive metal if you like, but a slightly harsh term maybe, but you catch my drift. They've got that 80s melodic flavour, and then they've got this catchy, heavy, really heavy sounding riffs, especially later on in their career where they become more progressive, more influenced from the gent scene, but not too much, because I'm not a huge gent fan, but I remain a Voyager fan. I mean, I love all Voyager albums. Very cool. You know, Daniel Estrin, I've got to keep mentioning that guy. His style of vocals is like, I don't know, it's fairly unique. I mean, there's a lot of melodic singers, but the way he sings, his melodies are really, really captivating. I mean, he really sings great melodies. When you listen to any Voyager song, you immediately get captured by the style, by the music. Especially if you're a child of the 80s or you're a teenager in the 80s like I was. I mean, listening to those kind of bands, you know, you get that vibe again. Obviously, you get the heavy metal vibe in the background as well. The very catchy, progressive, heavy riffs. Very cool, very charismatic band. It's impossible to pick faves, but Ghost Mile, the second to last album, even the most recent album is really good. V, I love that album, very good. There was another album before I loved, the debut I love. I told you, from beginning to end, Voyager, 7 CDs. Any Voyager CD is kick-ass, it's all good. People will have their favourites, and I've got my favourites, but if you put on a Voyager CD, you're guaranteed a good time. Okay, hope you enjoyed this run through of my 12 favourite Aussie melodic, heavy, power metal, progressive metal bands. Okay, stay heavy.